Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Come on, come on, come on. You can do better than that. Good morning. Come on. It's your morning. You're alive. Maybe you're not. I don't know. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. So what's going on? Who's got news? No news. All right. Starting to feel like fall up here. All right. So that's it. Nobody's just coming along. Somebody say something to me. I'm just all alone. Well, I have Shelby.
Shelby.
Something? Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. Love you all dearly, but the absence of interaction is why this will be it. You know, that if you're going to be, part of the thing about being a lawyer is I don't know anybody who doesn't engage. I don't know any lawyer who doesn't engage. And, be perfectly frank, this holds no interest for me. If you're not going to participate, not going to be on screen, why am I here? So, but you're here. I mean, a bunch of people aren't even here. So there is that.
Unknown caller.
What that is, but
Well, when you mentioned fall, I'm drinking pumpkin coffee.
there you go. Well, that's I drink iced tea, which is what I do. Let me just see. It's Julie. Let me just take this. See what's going on here. Yes, Julie.
Hi, I'm looking for the Zoom link for this class, and I cannot. I don't have the email link for it.
Well, I'll send it to you again, kiddo. Hang on. I got the class here. Say hi to Julie. Say hi. Come on.
Hi, Julie.
Hi, Julie.
There you go. All right. Julie, it's like we're on the Titanic and Julie's in the water. We got to get her back under the boat.
Yes, please.
You have a cold, Julie?
No.
Oh, so I heard you sniffling there.
I'm just a sniffly person, I guess.
All right. All right. So let's see here. So I want to forward this to, and I always send it to both your addresses, Julie.
I don't know what's going on. We had this issue before.
Okay. So this is to your Gmail address.
Okay. I'll close the phone and I'll just receive it because I don't know.
Oh, all right. All
All
right.
right, thank you.
You're welcome. Bye. All right. Okay. I want to do a couple of things today. I'm going to go a little bit off. I'll be happy to cover anything in analytical that you have. If there's anything you want to go over, I'll be happy to do that. What I wanted to do today was invest some time in demonstrating how I think you should be reading a reading comp passage. So I want to do one example of the narrative. Here comes Julie. And one example of the comparative. So that's going to be one part. I hope that doesn't take the whole time up. The other thing I'd like to do, because it's been really about 3 weeks since we've touched logical reasoning, is I wanted to go back into logical reasoning, take the first however many questions we can get through, and just show you how I would answer them. Because it's not about me, but it is about the technique. And I probably do possess the technique. So before I jump in, is there anything in analytical that's hanging over your head like this sword of Damocles?
I was just talking to Len Mitchell about this actually. I do not, I still have to work on if then.
Mhm.
I'm sorry,
I-
what about
I
Julie?
get either or, but if then is definitely something I have to work on.
You speak too quickly for me. My ears are old and your voice is young.
I'll speak slower. I understand either or, but I'm having trouble with if then. Something's not clicking yet. I'm sure it will, but for now, if
Okay.
then isn't clicking yet.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm having a problem with the diagramming because remember before, since I've used different like I guess courses, I still have like their way of doing things. So like I was working with Marcos last time and it was this thing where if we have if apples then oranges with different courses, we would have to put the contrapositive of it. So is it always the case that we have to put the contrapositive of all the rules?
No.
Oh.
No. But again, these are all wonderful. This is a very rich test. These are wonderful questions. And I'm going to address each of them. It's a really rich test. So Marielle, addressing your question first, I almost object to the word contrapositive.
Okay.
It's not because that concept's not on the test. The concept is on the test. But it's needlessly complicated and it belongs to a different discipline. And that's the way this stuff has been presented to you. Much of this material, if you've been elsewhere, is presented to you the way the philosophy of logic has been presented to me as a philosophy student. Well, that's great, but you see, I'm no longer a philosophy student. I'm a lawyer.
Right.
And lawyers don't use the language of philosophy students. So when you take that discipline and you superimpose it over this test, unless your background is in, say, the philosophy of logic, then it's fine. Then you're going to understand it from a different perspective. Then we wouldn't have to say, as Julie brings up, we don't have to say if then, because if we're children of the philosophy of logic, why would I say if then when I can say antecedent and consequent? But there's no lawyer on the planet that uses that language. So with respect to the one diagramming where the world is either or, the first is you have to recognize it. So you want to go back in that spreadsheet I gave you and go over the examples. And I suspect you're going to find, it's a visual pattern where your eyes, just common sense, is you're looking at example A and B and C and D and E. And by the time you get to example H, you're saying, yeah, I see the common thread. Like I know how to recognize this, and gosh, I didn't need to take any class in philosophy to do it. No, you don't. So again, it's not that they don't test for the contrapositive. It's that the legal application of that would never use that language. And two, you don't need that in the way that I'm suggesting you diagram, with the one line down the middle and a column on either side. You take any if-then statement, right?
Mhm.
So say, if A, then B, then immediately when you're diagramming this, you're on automatic pilot. That means, well, you're going to negate and reverse. You're going to take the B and say, well, if you say A is in, B is out, or let's use folks here. If I say, Mariella, when you are in, here's my rule. You're either in or out, right? When you're in, CJ's out.
Okay.
Wouldn't it be fair? So forget about this other stuff from your past, right? Just imagine it was a bad dream.
Okay.
If I say to you, you're either in or out, and I say, okay, Mariella, when you're in, CJ's out. Haven't I also said you cannot be both in together?
Have you?
Well, let's examine the statement. When you are in, which is if and when for the purposes of this test are interchangeable, not
Right.
in real life, but for the purpose of test, right? So if you are in the room, CJ is out of the room.
Okay.
Isn't the derivative statement from that you're not within the room?
Yeah, they were both not in the room.
Everybody with me? So you don't have to touch any of the language of the philosophy of logic to get this. You say, oh, let me just figure it out. Like, I've just been hired to run a fruit stand, right?
Mhm.
I got to do this to get paid. Now, the guy, whoever runs it, or the gal, whoever runs it, whether they're a jerk or not, they say to me, if oranges are on the stand, tangerines are not. The first deduction I make is, well, oranges and tangerines cannot both be on the stand. Talk to me. Come on, stay with me. Give me something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So now you take the second derivative statement, which is, since they both cannot be on the stand, well, if tangerines are on the stand, oranges are not.
Mhm.
So the original state, well, that is the contrapositive. What we just did is the contrapositive, but you don't need the language. You don't need the background in the philosophy of logic. You just need your common sense. And on this test, there's no time. So this just becomes a recognition test. So if you want to recognize the language of the philosophy of logic, then go take a bunch of philosophy courses specializing in logic. And then you'll recognize it over the course of some period of years. That's not what the LSAT's looking for. So again, you're going back to language and principles that are needlessly complex. All you do is you take it, and you can take that orange and tangerine example and just make this stuff up, right? Because in that world of either or, there are so few constraints. But the main one is if then. So if oranges are for sale, tangerines are not, which means they can't both be for sale, which means when tangerines for sale, oranges are not for sale. And when it comes for being not for sale, it is perfectly possible for both orange and tangerines not to be for sale. Then you take that, Mariella, and you expand it. And you say, well, what if there's a third fruit?
Right.
Or what if the person comes in and says to me, not if one's for sale, one's not. What if the manager comes in and says to me, well, if tangerines are for sale, then oranges are for sale. Well, that's different from
One being for sale and the other one not.
right. So you just get this in regular life and you'll turn out to be a lawyer. Right. You say, oh, okay. So how does that change things? Because I want to keep my job. So this person comes in, as the manager comes in and says, Peter, if tangerines for sale, oranges are for sale. Okay. Well, that means to me that if the oranges are not for sale, the tangerines can't be for sale. Because she just told me when the tangerines are on sale, the oranges are on sale. Right? So if you then tell me, well, the oranges are not on sale. Well, if the oranges are not on sale, then the tangerines are not on sale. Do you see it? And can you work with it?
Mhm. So I guess it would be easier with doing what, like the diagram that you had versus, because I think I was wasting too much time. So like if Mariella's in, CJ's out, and then I'll start doing every single step. And I think that's what was taking too much of my time.
That would take too much time. During preparation, when I was a kid, I don't know what they do now, but when I was a kid, when you learned math, you learned by long division,
Mhm.
and then you learn by short division, right? And in any kind of standardized test, you're going to have to go by short division because there are time limits. And this is kind of the same. Is the learning of it, you absolutely can go step by step so that you're aware of what's going on.
Mhm.
But at the end of this process, that you just say, no, if somebody says to me, if tangerines are in, oranges are out, I'm going to say, okay, then if oranges are in, tangerines are out, they both can't be in. At least one of them's got to be out. And I just have this nailed. I'm ready.
Okay.
And then I can work the other hypothetical. If oranges are in, tangerines are in. Oh, okay. Well, then if tangerines are out, oranges are out. And I don't know anything about, I'm forgetting my own example. If tangerines are in, oranges are in. Okay. That means if oranges are out, tangerines are out. When tangerines are out, I don't know a damn thing about oranges. And when oranges are in, I don't know a damn thing about tangerines. When you have that, you're golden.
Okay.
Working to that, it will solve any hypothetical it's attached to.
Okay. Because that's what I was doing to myself last week. During the week, I was testing myself with the rules, with the analytical portion. So I would put the rules and just focus on the rules, and then I went on the questions, just like to get the idea and understand the rules.
And that's what you should be doing. In that world of either or hypotheticals, right? The number of constraints you're presented with is about 5, maybe 6. One's in, one's out.
Mm-hmm.
One's in, the other's in. One's in, 2 are out. One's in, 1 or 2 or both are out. There ain't a lot more. So it's like once you have command of that, no matter, again, it's law school. It's when I understand the principle of the Commerce Clause, when I understand what the Commerce Clause actually represents, and you give me a case involving commerce, I'm probably going to solve it because I understand the guiding principle. And so here, no matter what, if they give you an either or hypothetical, they have always gone back to the same 5 or 6 constraints. And
No, please finish off and I'll ask my question.
and that is the same for fixed order, for relative order. It's the same. They don't change. I mean, how many different ways can they test you for relative order? Somebody's in between 2 other people. Somebody's in front of 2 other people. Somebody's behind 2 other people. Somebody's next to somebody else, but I don't know who's first. This is so limited. And if you understand those constraints, they will appear on your test. I promise you, they're not going to change it. Then you're home. If you go into fixed order, there are only a certain number of ways they can invite you to bifurcate or trifurcate to create 2 scenarios or 3. They can do it by giving you a direct constraint. They say F is 3 or 5. They can do it by giving you an indirect constraint that F is excluded from 1, 2, 6, and 7. Oh, okay. Well, then it's 3, 4, or 5 chuckles, right? This guy comes before this gal, or it's really limited. And it's not a test to, again, don't worry about getting things right now. Once you understand the constraints in analytical, you'll own it, to the degree that the time they give you is sufficient, which that'll depend from person to person. So Marielle, did I answer your question?
Yes, you did.
Okay. Julie?
Yeah, I just wanted to pose a hypothetical, I guess, and just make sure that it's clear to me. So let's say that if oranges are in, tangerines and kiwis are out. So then we know that if oranges are in, that tangerines and kiwis cannot be in. But if kiwis are in, we don't know anything about oranges or tangerines, correct?
Well, let me put it in my own words.
Okay.
So if the constraint is, what's important in your example is the conjunction. What's
Mhm.
important is your example is the and. Right, so you're saying so the manager comes in and when we're both working there, Julie, and the manager says, okay, listen, if you're gonna put the oranges up on that stand for sale, I don't want to see the tangerines or the kiwis. So they're both out. So then the derivative from that becomes, if either the tangerines or the kiwis or both are on that stand, the oranges cannot be on the stand,
I understand.
right? So the and when you're doing the derivative rule, the and becomes the or. When in the original rule, it's an or. So if you change that, you say, well, you know, again, the manager comes in, the manager says, Julie, when the oranges are on that stand, either the pears or the kiwi or both are not. Oh, okay. So I can comply with that by keeping the pears off, but allowing the kiwis to be on.
But
So
in that case, it'd also be no oranges, right?
now I'm afraid I forgot my own example. When you have, let me try it again. If we say when orange is on the stand, either the pears or the kiwis or both are off the stand. That or becomes an and,
Mhm.
right? So then when you say, okay, so when they're both on the stand, the oranges cannot be on the stand, but one of them could be on the stand and the oranges remain on the stand.
Mhm. Oh. Oh, okay, so it'd have to be that the pears and kiwis would have to be there together for the oranges not to be there.
Correct.
But
It would force the oranges off, yes.
yes, but if only one is there,
So the
then
oranges could be there.
okay. All right.
So it's just these, and that really, I mean, there's a little more than that going on, but not much more. So if you're doing like the study group thing and you just create these hypotheticals and work through them together, you're likely to benefit.
I do have a question. So why does the or become an and?
Well, if you say it has to do with the compliance of the law. So you're saying if we stay with pears, orange, and kiwis, right?
Mhm.
So when we say when pears are on the stand, either oranges or kiwis or both are going to be off the stand. Okay. So what you're doing is you're breaking the way you create the derivative law is by breaking the original law. So how do you break the law where it says when oranges are on the stand, either peewee, I said peewees, either pears, that's one of the two, or kiwis, that's one of the two, or both are off the stand. So any of those, you're in compliance with the original law. You break the original law by saying, well, what if both the pears and the kiwis are on the stand? Well, if they're both on the stand, I've broken the law, and therefore the oranges can no longer be on the stand. So that's why the and becomes an or, and the or becomes an and, because basically you're breaking the law when you break the original condition.
Okay.
It's not kid stuff. Again, you guys want to be lawyers. So again, unless I've just like wasted 30 some odd years of my life, this stuff's not kid stuff. And again, you need to be patient. Look, if you want to be successful in life, I'm just kind of thinking that success is far more often than not the result of sustained effort over a prolonged period of time to gain incremental advantage. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. So don't do it. If you're lazy, don't do it. I don't imagine you can have a wonderful life if you're lazy. But this isn't the business for that. This is, it's been my life. Not that I've been successful, but it's been my life. And you put those elements together, if you're gonna argue a murder case, or you're gonna try whatever, a murder case, and you don't expect to put in sustained effort, hello. And if you don't think the sustained effort's gonna go over a prolonged period of time, well, good luck with that. And if you think that the sustained effort over a prolonged period of time is going to result in, the guy breaking down on the stand, nobody ever broke down. I mean, I broke down in court a few times, but no witness has ever broken down in court. It's not what happens. So you get incremental advantage. Yeah, that's how you succeed. So if I were facing the LSAT, that's exactly the way I would approach it. So, I don't want to hear you have to take the test in October. Unless you're going to tell me if you don't, there's a death sentence. You don't have to take the test in October. You just want to take it in October, or you want to listen to other people, which I'm not a big fan of. If you just accept that the test is robust and is not testing you about academics, which some of you, perhaps all of you, are very well versed in. It's not testing you on that. I'm not here to compete with you with the knowledge of, what you have in psychology or economics or philosophy. That's not why I'm here. I'm here because I'm a lawyer. So work with it, respect it, be patient, and just keep at it. Mariella, anything? Well, I don't mean to bring it. Anything else on just Mariella's point? Okay. So Julie had raised the if-then. And that's a very rich area. So that's Shelby. Shelby wants to know, but I don't know if you can hear Shelby. So give me a shot. All right, it's okay. Thank you. You're going to talk about the if-then statement. I know. Do you hear her barking?
Yeah. It's not super loud, but we can hear her.
Somebody's delivering something. Okay, so Julia, the if-then has different applications in analytical and logical reasoning. In logical, Shelby, hey, Shelby, come here. Hey, Shelby. Doofus. Come here. Thanks. Take the rest of the day off, will you? Take the rest of the day off. I know. Germans. You can't live without them. You can't live with them.
She's a good girl.
She's doing her job. So if then is a really, really rich, and again, in law, we're talking about conditions subsequent and conditions precedent. So the language changes, it shifts when you come into law, but it's if then. A condition precedent is something that hasn't happened, it's if. A condition subsequent is one that came about, it's that. There are three expressions. So this is more in logical reasoning, but there are three expressions to be aware of that you're tested on and understanding the difference. If then, always without exception, cites a sufficient condition. No exception. So, and you can make up anything you want, but when you say, well, if it rains, I'll get wet. Now, we all know in real life, a statement like that is not necessarily true, because somebody would say, well, what if I have an umbrella? But we're not in real life. We're talking about the form of a statement. So the form of an if-then statement, it may be mistaken in content. In other words, somebody may say that and mean that, right? So somebody says to you, if you go outside, you'll get wet. And you're not going to get wet because you have an umbrella. But that doesn't affect the form of the statement. The form of it is that the speaker was telling you was sufficient condition. You're going to get wet if it rains. So it's got to rain, right? That hasn't occurred, but that's sufficient to bring it about. That doesn't mean it's necessary to bring it about, right? So the person says, okay, if you go outside and it rains, you'll get wet. Well, that doesn't mean you couldn't go outside and walk under an open fire hydrant, right? In which case you get wet, right? So a sufficient statement, when you use the expression if then, that precise expression, then it is sufficient but not necessary. There are other ways for the effect to come about. So that's if then. This test is all about words. It's all about words. I mean, it's not about nouns, so don't freak out over nouns. Okay. If then is different from only if. And again, in logical reasoning, you're tested on it. In both sections, you're tested on it, but in analytical, there's a different spin. So in logical reasoning, every time so think about this, when you say if then, and in logical reasoning, the issue is a flawed argument. Well, you have a great starting point because you know the argument is flawed, right? If the reasoning is resting on if then the reasoning is citing sufficiency. Does everybody understand? Please, if you don't understand, communicate, because there are so many different ways of explaining it in like down to earth ways, but I can't explain it if I'm not aware that it's unclear. So sufficiency is critical. Is there anybody who?
Explain it? Yeah,
Yeah,
it wouldn't hurt.
Insufficient and the necessary.
I'm going right. That's where I'm going next. But right now, I just want to go on sufficient.
Yeah, sufficient, yeah.
Well, right, Marielle, but do you get sufficiency?
No, that's what I want you to explain sufficient and necessary condition.
Okay, I'm going to necessary right next, but sufficient. Think of sufficient as adequate. It's all that needs to be done to achieve the objective, but it doesn't mean it's the only way to achieve the objective. So if you're playing a football game and you're down by 1 point, well, it's sufficient if you score a safety on the other team because you get 2 points. It's sufficient if you kick a field goal because you get 3 points. And it's sufficient if you get into the end zone because you get 6 points. They're all sufficient, right? So, but none of them is not, but they're not necessary. I don't have to get a safety. I don't have to kick a field goal. I don't have to get into the end zone. None of them are necessary, but each of them is sufficient. So sufficiency is when you achieve the objective, but it's not the only way you can achieve the objective. That's sufficiency. So I'm sitting in Pound Ridge, right? So White Plains is that way. So if I want to go to White Plains, there are a countless number of routes I can take, say by car, right? There are countless number of routes I can take to go to 25 miles to White Plains. Each one of those routes is sufficient. It doesn't mean they're practical. It doesn't mean they're efficient. It doesn't mean any of that. It means they're sufficient. None of them is necessary. So that's sufficiency. And again, you need to get the concept. It's tested heavily in both logical and analytical, but logical, that's what's going to show up more often in a flawed argument or in an argument that requires an assumption. Necessity.
Sufficiency comes in when the argument usually is flawed.
Well, usually would be, I might refrain from usually, but I might not. What I'm saying to Julie is if when I'm reading a flawed argument, so I know it's flawed because that's the issue, right? And the argument has the word if in it, then what's coming to my mind, then my antennas go up And an answer choice that is very much in play would be that the author mistakes a sufficient outcome for a necessary outcome. But that doesn't mean that will be the flaw. There could be any number of other flaws in there. So I don't want to suggest that a majority of flawed arguments are flawed on the basis of necessity and sufficiency. That's not accurate. But I do want to suggest that when necessity and sufficiency are raised in logical
Makes
reasoning,
sense.
it's often there'll be at least one example in a flawed argument. So have I answered your question, Julie?
Yeah, it did. And I also understand your distinction.
Mariella, did you have something or? Okay, so necessity is introduced with the expression only if. So just think of the word if the if is followed by the then. If the if is followed by a comma, which serves as the then. If that's your statement, sufficiency, lights out, no exceptions. But there's a separate statement, and the separate statement is only if. And only if is a requirement. So only if, always, without exception, the word if is modified by the word only. Okay, so what does that mean? That means it's a necessary condition. So in a very similar way, if I'm in logical reasoning and I'm in a flawed argument and I see only if, well, you know what? I'm keeping my eyes open. I mean, I have to let the argument proceed, right? But one possibility here is that the author mistakes a condition that's necessary for a condition that's sufficient. So only if, example of that would be, well, it just sounds so, it can sound so correct when you're not sensitized to the language. Because like if I say to a regular person, and this is an LSAT example, or it's very similar to it. If I say to a regular person, you know, there's this bridge that's going up over the Hudson, and the bridge will be passable only if it's built from a certain material at a certain height and over a certain course of time. And then I say, let's say instead of saying that, and it's built in 9 months, right? So I'm saying, okay, so the bridge is passable only if it's built of a certain material, it's built at a certain height, and it's completed within 9 months. And then my next sentence is, so, you know, now it's 10 months later. And I say to you, well, you know, that bridge I was talking about 9 months ago, it was built of exactly the material that was required. It was built at the exact location that was specified, and it was finished in under 9 months. And then my conclusion is, and therefore the bridge is passable. Doesn't that sound like it's right?
No.
Oh, come on. Doesn't it sound like it's right? It's not right, but it doesn't. I mean, I think it sounds like it's right. I'd say, oh, okay, I'm going to go drive there. And then I fall in the window. And
I think we're listening very hard, so now it doesn't make sense.
you know. So why is that argument flawed? You say these three conditions, like this thing is going to work only if these three conditions are met, right? And then you give the three conditions and you say they're all met. Why isn't that bridge passable? Well, why can we not assume it is passable?
Oh.
Go ahead.
Oh, because if I'm remembering correctly, you said it had to be done in a certain time, but it seems like it took more time than originally said it was necessary. So if it is necessary for it to be passable only if it's built in a certain amount of time, then if it was built over the amount of time, then it cannot be passable.
No, Julie, I'm saying that would be correct, but I'm saying that the condition of time has been met. Assume that
It was
conditions are met. And then you say, and think of just a regular person who's not sensitized to language, And that would be me if I were not sensitized to language. And I'd be saying, oh crap, let me go drive and take the view.
Mhm.
Mariella, did you?
You said that it was built at the location.
Hmm.
So that wasn't a necessary condition you initially said.
All right, let me try it again. Let's say there are 3 conditions, A, B, and C. Right? And I say to you, this bridge will be passable only if we successfully complete A and B and C.
Right.
And now I say to you in the next sentence, we have successfully completed A and B and C. My conclusion is the bridge is passable. That is a flawed argument.
Well, there may be things that makes the bridge not passable, like if something's blocking the entrance of the bridge. Is that where you're getting at? Like, as in, like, to be passable, that means like there's no reason why it should not be passable. That's not definite.
No, I mean that's related to it, but not on point.
Okay.
I'm saying I presented an argument where the bridge is passable only if 3 conditions are met, and each of the 3 conditions has been met.
Right.
So what's the problem? And you're in the neighborhood, Julie.
Is it saying that only those conditions need to be met?
I'm sorry?
Saying that only A, B, and C need to be met? That's it?
Well, I'll repeat the statement. The bridge is passable only if condition A, condition B, and condition C are met. Condition A and B and C are met, and therefore the bridge is passable. What's the problem?
I might be reading into it, but shouldn't there be more conditions to build a bridge?
Well, you're reading in from the outside. I just gave you, it's not a question of whether there should be. I'm telling you, the bridge is passable only if. So it's not what should. Again, you're dancing around.
I feel like I am too. Okay, I'm gonna sit back and see what the answer is.
You're just going to rip it.
I feel it too.
Well, and this is what the LSAT is testing, and it's all about words. And it's not hard because it's all about words. It's
Okay.
just unfamiliar.
Can you say
And
it again?
Well, like when you guys were saying like a regular person wouldn't take it that way. I don't know. I would. Okay.
Can you say your statement again?
Could it be because you said and A and B and C were met?
Well, they all were met. A and B and C were all met.
Yeah, but you said in order for the bridge to be built, conditions A, B, and C need to be met.
Whether I say A comma, B comma, and C comma, or I say A and B and C, it's the same statement.
Okay.
All right. Here's the deal. You've all focused on the right side of what I said. In other words, the introductory, the precatory language, the introductory language was only if. That's what matters. What follows is immaterial, because I could have given you 17 conditions that follow, and it wouldn't have changed a damn thing. Only if is saying you absolutely have these things. In order to change that statement, in order to make the statement valid, it would have to shift from only if to if and only if. Without the if, once the only modifies the if, once you have only if, you say, okay, you mean I need that stuff. So what it means in regular life is, so I may say to you, I'm going to make Joe's lamb chops. And I can make Joe's lamb chops only if I have the lamb chops, I have olive oil, I have mustard, I have red wine, I have garlic. And that's correct. It would be impossible for me to make Joe's lamb chops as I make them, obviously named after Joe, in the absence of each of those 5 ingredients. But I need more than that. I need basil. I mean, Joe would have a stroke if I served his lamb chops without a ton of basil. So I got to have basil. But I never told you anything about basil. So only if is giving you a list, but it's giving you an incomplete list. So I mean, you got to have each of those. You absolutely have to have each of them. The absence of one destroys what you want to accomplish because they're all necessary. But once you say only if, you have said, you have screamed from the heavens, this list is not sufficient. So no matter what I give you, it doesn't matter. Welcome to the LSAT. So if you get it
Can you
now, every time you see, I'm sorry?
Piece with that against, you're saying that you're saying only if makes it incomplete, your list incomplete.
I'm saying it is a list of necessary conditions.
Mhm.
That's it.
Can you apply that to your example of the bridge example?
Sure. If I say to you, the bridge is complete only if, now again, you need an issue, right? So the issue is, it's a flawed argument, right? So you have to have a trigger, right? So you're saying, okay, it's a flawed argument, right? And you're reading it in that context, Julie. This is a flawed argument. So you are told it's flawed, right? And then I say, well, the example I have on the LSAT is for this antenna to operate, it needs to be at a certain height, at a certain location, and of a certain material. So that's an actual example. The antenna in question is of that height, at that location, and of that material, and therefore it will operate. And that's a flawed argument.
So I can
And-
say this is a flawed argument because it assumes that those are the only conditions necessary to make the antenna work. Okay,
That's it.
gotcha.
That's
Oh,
it.
please continue though, because just because I got it doesn't mean that we all could have gotten it. So please continue.
Well, do you guys see it? Talk to me. Because it really is about the language. It's about you're matching the language to the issue. So if that were an assumption issue, right? You could have to take that very same example, say the antenna, right? And the antenna has to be of a certain height only if this antenna is at a certain height, of a certain material, and at a certain location. Only if that will this antenna work. We meet all three conditions. The conclusion is the antenna works, but now the issue is identify an assumption. And the answer is going to be there's no additional condition. Because now you're trying to validate the argument. So if it's a flaw, the answer is going to be you're assuming that there aren't additional conditions. If it's an assumption, you're validating the conclusion and you're saying there were no additional conditions. Tell me this isn't a beautiful thing. And these concepts are central, and they're not, again, it's not just the bloody LSAT. You cannot practice law without an like in my world, right? If I'm in charging homicide, murder in New York State, it's I can prove murder only if I prove with the intent, the person has an intent, a specific intent to take the life of another person, such life is taken. Well, all those are necessary, and I can prove murder only if I prove each of those three, but they're not sufficient because I failed to mention in that list that it is the defendant who had to take that life of the other. So they were necessary conditions, but not sufficient. So again, lawyers aren't saying necessary and sufficient. That's not what we do, right? We're saying, how many elements in this crime are there? Like, how many elements do I have to prove? Oh, okay. Well, sometimes there are a lot of elements, sometimes there aren't. Each element is necessary. Each element would be on the list. But until I complete the entire list, it's not sufficient. So on the LSAT, only if is screaming, these are necessary conditions. It is not telling you they're sufficient. They could be sufficient, but they're not telling you that. So that's if, always sufficiency. That's only if, always necessity. Final one gives you both. And that's if, comma, only if. And now we started out with the word if and we didn't modify it. That's sufficiency. Then we took the word if and we did modify it and we said only if. That's necessity. Now we take the only if and we modify that with the if. And now we have sufficiency, which is the if, and we have necessity, which is the only if. And that means this is the one and only way this puppy can happen. It is both necessary and sufficient. So there are things that simply require one thing. You have to have the one thing and you need nothing else. And then you got it. And that's if, comma, and only if. And those are the three. And so anytime you see if and only if, this was the only way to accomplish the objective. There was no second way. This was it. Right? So if it's it, it's necessary. And if it achieves it, it's sufficient. So those are now if and only if is the least heavily tested by far. Because you can't really make it's hard to make a flaw out of it. If you use the language of if and only if, then the reasoning you give brings about the conclusion. But the only if, distinguished from just the if, is heavily tested. So that's how it works in logical reasoning. Is everybody okay with it? I mean, there's a lot here. I'll load a video. I have some class video on the if-then statement. And I'll load that to the classes for tomorrow. But with respect to logical reasoning, speak now or forever hold your peace.
Could we try a couple, like 2 questions on logical with these examples, or for like now or no?
Well, I could do that next week, but I don't have the examples, I didn't know it was going to come up. So,
Okay.
But I can do that. I'll make a note and you'll yell at me, Mario. Make sure you yell at me. If next week I don't start off by examples of if then, you can start calling me names. It wouldn't be the first time. Well, it'd be first time for you, but it wouldn't be the first time.
I would, if that's okay, like to just go over it to make sure like it's clear, real quick. So
Okay, sure.
for all of us, I'm assuming. So if is when something is sufficient, adequate. Only if is when something is necessary, and unless it said that there's no additional condition. A flaw may be that assuming that those are the only conditions for an objective to be met. And
But hang on. Yeah. For purposes of the else that, the only if needs a partner. In other words, it needs an issue. So when the issue is identify a flaw in an argument, the only if is there with some frequency to test your knowledge of the difference between only if and if. And so in the flaw, when you see only if, you're saying, okay, they've given me things that are necessary, but they've left open that may not be sufficient. On the assumption issue, it's just the reverse. On the assumption issue, to validate the argument, when I see only if, then to validate the conclusion, I have to insert the additional premise. There was nothing else.
Okay. That makes sense. And the last one is if and only if, which is the least tested on because it's hard to flaw. And it's saying that basically this way is the only way.
Yep. Yeah, if and only if means there's only one way to achieve the outcome. So if there's only one way, that way is necessary. There's no other way. It's like saying there was only one road to connect me to White Plains. That's it. There's one saying there's only one road. There's nothing else. And you'd have to start with some premises you would stipulate to. Let's say I'm going to take a car and it's just one road and there ain't nothing else. I live on a cliff, right? Well, if there's no other way to get there, then that road is necessary if I'm going to drive, and it's sufficient because it's going to take me there.
Mhm.
All right. A lot to chew on. A lot to chew. You want to be lawyers, right?
Yes.
You got to get that game. You got to pick that game up. Get more time out there in the field. And then in logical, and these are my characterizations, in logical reasoning, the if-then statement is terribly important and quite powerful. In the analytical reasoning, it's different. It's just an if-then statement. It needs a clarifying factor. And a clarifying factor, are you talking about two possibilities or multiple possibilities? And the power of the if-then statement, when there's only two possibilities, well, that's if-then becomes either or. Right? Because then if we go back to the fruit, right? The fruit is you're either on the stand or you're off the stand. Okay. So if oranges are on, tangerines are off. All right. Well, that to me kind of means then, well, tangerines are on, oranges are off. So the if then in where there are only two possibilities, to me, I would characterize as a very powerful statement in analytical. But where you move that into three or more possibilities, it becomes a much weaker, much weaker premise. Because if I say, well, if I have 7 variables, now I have that same if then, right? So if I have 2 variables, I get a lot of mileage out of this. If somebody says to me, you're either selected or not selected for a committee, and then you say, well, if Peter is selected for the committee, then Antoinette is not. Oh, well, then that tells me, if Antoinette is selected for the committee, I'm not. And it says both Antoinette and I cannot be, selected to the committee. And it allows that Antoinette and I both not be selected, but it's impossible for both of us to be selected. So again, my characterization of you give me an if then when there are 2 possibilities in analytical, right? So the application of this in a different field will have different implications, but that's not my issue. My issue is what's the implication on this section of this task? Now, if I expand that to 7 possibilities and I say, if then, well, now it's no longer if you're selected, you're selected or not. No. Now it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And now I look at an if statement. If G is 3, H is 5. Well, all that tells me is that if H is not 5, G is not 3. That's a much weaker statement. Say if G is 3, H is 5. Well, if G is 1 or 2, or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, you've told me nothing because you've given me no law. And unless you tell me H is 5, even if you tell me H is 5, G can be 3, but G doesn't have to be 3. And yeah, if you tell me H is 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 or 7, then you told me G is not 3. That's not much information. It is information, but that has nowhere near, for me, the influence of an if-then when you're constricted to 2 possibilities. So when I'm deciding how to approach organization in analytical, the if-then statement is I mean, there are always exceptions to stuff, but there aren't a lot of exceptions. The if-then statement is not something I expect to build on. The if-then statement is something I expect to apply after I've built the concrete law. So I'll have my law, and then I'll leave on the side, okay, so if G3, H5, so that's great. If you tell me G is 3, I have information. If you tell me H is somewhere else, I have some information, but that's it. And I will apply that.
So you're saying that if then with two options is very similar to either or, which is a very strong premise, less like room for error. And as the options increase, room for error increases, making the premise weaker.
Yeah, I wouldn't use that language. I'm not at all comfortable with that language. The bottom line is, in analytical reasoning, if there are 7 possibilities, if there are more than 2 possibilities, if then becomes a less influential and less powerful constraint. If it's 2 possibilities, it's a powerful constraint in that I can look at that and say, well, all right, again, and we can use that example. If there are just 2 possibilities, and you say, well, if Julie's selected, Peter's not selected, I have a bunch of really concrete derivatives from that. I can say, well, you know what? Both Julie and Peter are not selected. And if Peter is selected, Julie's not selected. And both Peter and Julie could be not selected. That is something I can build on. So that becomes part of my framing of solution. Whereas when you have an if-then with multiple possibilities, it's very unlikely that's going to frame my solution. I'm just going to apply that fact as I move through resolution. So again, I'm, whether you want to equate if-then when there are just 2 universes to either or, I don't really care. It's seeing the difference between if-then on this section of this test, the influence of that statement when there are just 2 possibilities. You're either selected or you're not. As opposed to when there are multiple possibilities, and then it becomes distinctly less influential. All right. Anything else on that? You had your dose of if-then, and all right, okay. Let me just see if we're doing here on 6. All right, then I think what I'll do, since that took substantially more time than I anticipated, which is fine, as long as it's helpful to you guys, is what I want to do is we'll do some, I just want to get you back into back to the technique in logical reasoning of IRAC. And so what I did today is I just, I said, let me pick an exam where I can just go over how you solve in logical reasoning. And then also how we could do some reading comp in the same exam. So the exam I picked was, for no particular reason, was 67. So what you want to do is, I'm going to minimize my screen. I want you to go to Law Hub. And open up to prep test 67. And this, again, this is the way that I want you to prepare. So I'm just opening up here to section 2. And you don't have to set aside tons of time to do this. It's just good to do it every day. Maybe in a day you only have 15 or 20 minutes. That's fine. Take the 15 or 20 minutes and practice understanding how to approach this, as opposed to obsessing over whether you got something right. So for the purpose of this exercise, I thought, because I just did this morning, I said, let me just go back over, I haven't seen this exam in who knows since when. And so let me just look at maybe the first 10 questions. So this is section 2, logical reasoning. And I just want to, sort of like going out to the course, I'm practicing my swing. The ball goes off to the left, that's fine. Goes off to the right, that's fine. I'm just out to practice my swing. Okay. So everybody with me on prep test 67, section 2, question number 1? Anybody?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mine is still loading.
I'm sorry?
I said mine is still loading.
What
Oh.
section is it?
Section 2. Section 1 is analytical. This is prep test 67, section 2. And again, what I'm suggesting as a preparation, again, you're preparing, you're not executing. This is, for the most part, not about taking exams under time conditions. It's about practicing the technique, which is what you do before you go out to the course. And a great way to do this, from my vantage point, is just work on the first 10 questions. And don't burn yourself out, which means you got to give yourself time. And then say, okay, so I'm going to look for question number 1. And I'm going to look to that top right-hand side. And they want me to weaken the argument.
Did you say the question again? Not the question, the test again? Oh, 67. And what section?
It's prep test 67, section 2,
Thanks all.
question number 1. And I'm saying if you just kept practicing these first 10, just, when you're done with this, you would go to prep test 67, section 3. Sit down and do the first 10. Do that for 10 exams. You'll have done 20 sections where you're just doing the first 10 questions, and you're going to get the swing, and you're going to start to get more of these right. And then that's going to help build you up for, the next phase, which would be, okay, now start doing questions 11 through 20, which typically overall will be more challenging. Okay, well, that's great. But if I can't get 1 through 10 right, I'm probably going to get my ass kicked at 11 through 20. So let me be patient. And I look at number 1, the issue is to weaken an argument. And I'm thinking, now I'm reading this new way, right? So I'm in logical reasoning. I know what weakening is. I got that, no surprise. I'm going to read this sentence by sentence, and I'm going to try to figure out how to weaken it before I've looked at an answer choice. Oh, okay. So planting peach trees on their farm makes more sense for the Johnsons than planting apricot trees. So I stop. That sounds like a conclusion to me. So you stop. You say, okay, there's a recommendation. We're telling the Johnsons that you want to plant peach trees there, not apricot trees. Got it. Next sentence. Although fresh, locally grown apricots are very popular in the area, the same is true of peaches. I stop. Okay, so the second sentence is just saying both of these fruit are popular. Next, however, individual peach trees cost much less to purchase and plant than do apricot trees, comma. So I say, oh, okay. So that's an advantage for the peach tree, right? I stop at that comma. I say, so you gave me an advantage to the peach tree, but I'm pulling for the apricots, right? Next clause. And peach trees also begin to bear fruit at a much younger age. So I'm done. So in terms of weakening this argument, the third sentence gives me information in support of the peach trees. But the conclusion is that we want to plant the apricot trees. I say, oh, okay. What? So say, all right. Well, then there must be something I'm missing here, right? And say, So I'm looking at this and saying, well, what are my options here? Again, if you break this down, they say planting, we want to plant the peach trees, right? Then they give you the evidence and they say both fruit are popular. And then you come to the third sentence and it says, the peach trees cost much less to purchase and plant than the apricots, and the peach trees also bear fruit at a much younger age. Okay. So I want to weaken the conclusion that it makes more sense to plant those peach trees. Okay, but the only evidence they gave me was in support of the bloody peach trees. So I want to weaken that. So there must be something about the apricot trees that you haven't told me. That's pro apricot. Okay, and A says fresh, locally grown apricots sell at a much higher price than do fresh, locally grown peach trees. So you could keep reading, but that will be the answer, because that is going to seriously weaken the argument that you should be planting the peach trees. In that answer choice A is saying you're going to get, it doesn't say a higher price, it says a much higher price. So again, you could keep reading. For the sake of time, I'm not going to do that. A is going to be the answer. Talk to me. Do you guys see this?
Yeah, I chose A.
Does anybody not see it? Okay. And you're using this time to read for the role in the argument. So I want you to slow down, as like what I'm doing, right? I'm reading this and I'm saying, looks like that's a conclusion in the first sentence because it's a recommendation. And then the second sentence, it's, yeah, okay, you're telling me it's a wash. The both of these things are popular. And then in the third sentence, you're giving me information that's positive to the peach trees, but you're also telling me to weaken that argument. So it must be either A, there's something about the peach trees you haven't told me that's negative, or B, there's something that you haven't told me about the apricot tree that is positive. Yes. Sharita's in the waiting room. Where'd you go? Sharita, where'd you go? Oh, well. Okay. And then you say, all right, so let me now go to, and again, I don't care how long it takes you to do it. Go to question number 2. And you say, all right, let me just try this one. The issue is, which one following, if true, most helps to explain the increased rate of population loss? Please stop for a second. All right, there's going to be an increase in the population loss. And I need to help explain that. For years, a variety of camel was endangered because much of its habitat was used as a weapons testing range. So you stop. Oh, okay, I get it, right. They're shooting the shit out of the camels. All right, I got that. Yeah, that's a problem. Next sentence. After the testing range closed, however, the population of these camels began falling even more quickly. And so that's what we're trying to explain, right? How come after shooting was over, the population of the camels fell even more quickly? And the answer is going to be because that shooting was keeping something else away. In other words, when the shooting stopped, something else took its place. And whatever the something else was more detrimental to the camel than the shooting. And all that work is done. Now I'm just saying, all right, what answer choice gets me there? And A says, the weapon tests had kept wildlife poachers out of the testing range. Again, that's the answer. As you spend more time with the test, you'll get more confidence, but that's the answer. Once you've framed it, once you've understood it, you want to whack the mole. And this is like whack that mole. So again, talk to me. Do you understand? One, you're always starting with that issue. Just stop, pause, say, all right, I need to help explain this. 2, you're reading the law, which is the argument, and you're reading it for the sole and exclusive purpose of solving the issue. 3, if this is straightforward, you'll have the answer before you look. It's just a test it's just testing you have the answer. Not can you find the answer? So you have it. It's like, hello. So talk to me on number 2. Any questions?
It makes sense. I guess the way my brain works is that the other answers are a bit outlandish, but like to a like a nth degree makes sense.
What
Like
is what answer did you like?
no, not that I liked. I agree that A is the answer. I guess where I get kind of caught up and I start overthinking is like, for example, for example, the unexploded bombs, like that are apparently like on the testing range. Like it never said anything about a bomb. It never said like it's outlandish. But in like this alternate universe where there are like unexploded bombs that started killing mass amounts of camels, I guess like where I have to pay attention is where it says which of the following, if true, most. Like, I guess most is the important word here as well. Because like bombs would kill a large amount of camels, but it's kind of like outlandish, I think, like that scenario.
Well, let me just read it, but yeah, you would have had to pass A to get to C.
Yeah.
And so I'm struggling with, even if you had kept reading, which again, this is certainly okay for now, but even if I had kept reading, there's no way that C would provide a serious threat to A being the answer. I mean, if in a comparative sense, like if C were the only thing there, that's one thing. But C has to be compared to A. And if I'm looking at A and then I read, well, so does this help explain the increased loss? So more camels are dead now than before.
Mm-hmm.
And this says, well, because of unexploded bombs, the land within the testing range was still somewhat dangerous. Well, if it's still somewhat dangerous, then its conditions didn't change.
Mm-hmm.
But that wouldn't increase the number of camels get killed.
Yeah.
That's a condition that's constant. So yeah, I would be. This is not academics. And when your mind is wandering like that, yeah, no. I mean, just try not to do that.
No, that's what I'm saying. Saying that like I'm thinking about a scenario where like maybe like I'm on a time crunch and like yeah, that's just has to be more cognitive, not letting my eyes wander, being more confident initial choice.
Yes, and for the purposes of this test, you're not going to be rewarded for coming up with inferential creative possibilities,
Mm-hmm.
which is what C at best is. For me, the goal here is to look at A and to say, it is true that there could be a better answer choice than A. That is absolutely true. But it's a remote truth, a very remote truth. And so for me, one of those psychometric qualities is lawyers have to make decisions. And we always have to make them on incomplete information. So the mere fact that somebody says to me, this most helps explain, in no way precludes me from selecting A without reading the rest of the choices when A is a compelling option.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, let's try number 3.
Oh.
Does anybody have any questions on 2?
I had a question.
Okay.
So what is initially what it's trying to say that even after the tests were stopped, the other issue that it had was the poachers?
Yep.
Okay. So
Yeah.
they were is it correct to say that the poachers might have been there before?
No, what it's saying is, in other words, what you want to come out of this with is you would read the first sentence and it's just telling you that this was used as a weapons testing range. Okay. And there was a camel that was a species of camels that were endangered because is in that first sentence. It's because of this testing range.
Mhm.
Then they say, well, you know what? The testing range closed. So if you just stop the argument there where the comma is, after the testing range closed, you would complete that sentence by saying, well, then the camels were less endangered. But that assumes that no other condition replaced the condition. Again, in law language, the testing range was a condition precedent that was there, that was messing up the camels, right? But that doesn't mean when you remove that condition that the camel's going to be any safer. It just means they're safer from that threat.
Oh, okay, yeah, I got it now.
And so what they want you to do here is not guess, like I had no idea the answer was going to be talking about poachers.
Mhm.
But I look at this and say, well, if you're telling me that the camels are like getting killed more now than when they're being shot at, well, then something else is doing that.
Right.
Well, it's the poachers. So I poachers, I could not anticipate, but that substitutes, that explains it. All right. And this is what you want again. If you're doing a study group, this kind of stuff where you're all discussing it, you got the bloody answer, it's there, right? So it's not like you can't identify the answer. But you work it out together so that you understand. So I look at 3. You want me to strengthen the argument. So no surprises here. Okay, I'm going to strengthen the argument. Well, I have to identify the argument to strengthen it. Well, let's see what I have here. It says to me, a person reading a new book for pleasure is like a tourist traveling to a new place. You stop. So it's an analogy. I have both read books for pleasure and I've traveled to new places. Okay, tell me more. The reader reads just as the tourist travels to enlarge understanding rather than simply to acquire information. Okay, so that's what you're telling me. That's your position, that's why both the reader and the tourist are doing this to inquire, to enlarge their understanding, right? Not just to read or visit more. Okay. Next sentence. Thus, it's better to read. Now, this is the conclusion because it's recommendation. Thus, it's better to read fewer books and spend more time on each rather than to read quickly. I'm sorry, not rather than to quickly read as many as one can. And again, this long run-on sentence, you just gotta stop and digest it. Okay, so this conclusion, first part of it is that it's better to read fewer books and spend more time on them. Just as it's better to travel to fewer places and spend more time in each, rather than spend a small amount of time in many different places. I got it. Now you want me to strengthen that? Okay, well, they got to give me some kind of an example that will strengthen, but I get it. Like for me, you're saying go back to Greece 3-4 times and spend time in Athens rather than going from Greece to Italy to Portugal to England, just to see the 4 different places. Just like it's better to read one book several times or one author several times than, yeah, okay. So I would now have to read, what do you got for me? Do I strengthen this by saying tourists typically learn something about the places they visit, even when they are there only to relax? I don't quite get what that's got to do with this. B, tourists gain much more understanding of the place once they have spent several days at that place than they do in their first few days. I would keep reading, but that's going to be the answer. Yeah, but I mean, here's an instance where I would keep it, but I'm not going to do it. But yeah, that's the answer. And then I would be reading C, D, and E to dismiss them, not to ruminate over them. You ruminate, you die, but you'll die anyway.
I think that's exactly my issue. Like I would get B, and then although I know B is probably the answer, I mean, I got the answer for this one, but I feel like in other instances is that I ruminate with the others. 'Cause I'm just like, the same thing with the first one. I know that A is the answer, but like, but what if there's like a 0.5 chance that like C is the answer though? Like, that's my issue.
And again, Julie, it's a psychometric test. So it involves a personality change.
Yeah, confidence, definitely.
Yeah, well, and that, you know, you have been in, you know, in my academic experience, I've been rewarded for ruminating. You know, I've had people, oh, I didn't think of that. You know, so so in that environment, to pause, to reflect, to try to go deeper than somebody else, you get credit for that. You do that on this test, you die. Swift death. So it does require a change. You know, so you can't be cavalier. It's not like you go through the test and you're but you cannot treat this as some kind of intellectual exercise. So is everybody okay with B on question number 3? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So 4. Now I would say here, for me, you see that big old word except? They're nice enough to put it in capital letters. I would say that's a danger sign. That, you know, based on, you know, it may not be for you, right? But for me, the word except means you're looking for what's not there. So I would just be careful. Now it's the question is labeled number 4. So it suggests that it had a high success rate, but it doesn't guarantee that, but it suggests that. So let me see what it is. Each of the following, if true, helps to account for the greater cost of modular furniture except. So stop for a second, you pause, and you say, okay, I'm going to read about modular furniture. And 4 of these choices are going to help explain why modular furniture is more expensive. One's not, and the one that doesn't is the answer. All right, so now let me read this. If you were really funky, you could try answering this without even reading the argument. You're really funky because you know whatever it is. If the answer choice explains why modular furniture should be more expensive, well, that ain't the choice. But we'll read what we have here. One way to furnish the living room is with modular furniture. Got it. Instead of buying a standard sofa, for example, one can buy a left end, right end, and a middle piece that can be combined to create an L-shaped sofa. Okay, I got that. Modular furniture, however, is far more expensive than standard furniture. Got it. Now you pause as you get to each period. You say, all right, I got it. I got this. On average, a 3-piece modular sofa costs almost twice as much as a standard sofa of comparable size and quality. So no surprise there, given the issue, because the issue said, you know, we wanted to explain, you know, why people are willing to pay more for modular furniture. Okay, A, modular furniture, unlike standard furniture, is not mass produced. Well, that's likely to make it more expensive. That's not the answer. B, the consumer demand for sofas sometimes increases more quickly than supply. Well, that's got nothing to do with modular furniture. So, I mean, I'll keep reading, but B's the answer. Because it's got nothing to do with modular furniture. Let me see what C says, though. The most fashionable designers tend to use modular furniture. Well, they're likely to be more expensive because they're fashionable designers, the most. D, because modular furniture pieces are custom ordered, they're never put on sale, they're likely more expensive. And E, modular sofas on average have a greater area of upholstered surfaces than do standard sofas. Well, it costs money to upholster them, so the answer is B. Talk to me. Anybody out there? I'm watching a squirrel up in the tree.
You're asking which answer
Hearing
we chose?
from this class.
You're saying which answer we chose?
B.
B, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. On 5. Okay, now here they want me to logically complete the argument. And they give me that little line. Okay, so. So again, I want to be kind of doing this before I look at answer choices, like what, you know, sort of like, how do I complete this argument? Well, okay, what do I have here? So we're talking about testosterone. And it says here that the hormone testosterone protects brain cells from injury. And so it's in the conjunctive, right? So the testosterone is doing two things. One, it's protecting the brain cell from injury. And two, it's reducing levels, right? And it's the noun stuff, which doesn't matter. The protein beta amyloid in the brain. Okay, I don't care about the protein beta amyloid. What you're saying here is in this first sentence, which you might want to reread, you might want to slow down, but testosterone does two things. It reduces, I'm sorry, it protects the brain from injury, the cells, right? And it reduces the level of this protein. Got it. Next sentence. Now they refer back to the protein. That's the beta amyloid, right? So I'm just saying, okay, this protein causally contributes to Alzheimer's. Well, then it's good to have testosterone up there, right? Because the testosterone is lowering the level of that protein, and that protein's role in this is that it contributes to Alzheimer's. So I'm saying go testosterone, comma. So the protein contributes to Alzheimer's, and people's whose brain cells are susceptible to injury are probably more susceptible to Alzheimer's. Well, okay. If you're saying to me that the protein is doing these bad things, and the Alzheimer's, I'm sorry, and the testosterone lowers the incidence of that protein, then testosterone is a really good thing. And then this goes, so there is reason to think that. So this can only go one of two ways to me, right? It either goes, there's reason to think that the testosterone is doing a good job up there, in that it is fighting off Alzheimer's, by defeating this protein. And the other way of looking at it, so there is reason to think that if you didn't have the testosterone, you'd be more at risk for Alzheimer's than if you did. So that all my work, that's all done. And this is to me, it seems like a denser argument than 1, 2, 3, or 4. And so I would treat it that way and say, I get it. Okay. And then we're kind of stuck here with reading the choices. But I'm saying whatever the answer is, it's got to go back to Alzheimer's. Well, I'm sorry, testosterone. So what does A say here? A says, so anyone whose brain cells are susceptible to injury will eventually develop Alzheimer's. No, for the word anyone. It's not about, it doesn't mean anyone, right? It's not anyone who's susceptible. Some people who are susceptible are not going to, there's no reason to believe they would experience that. B, whether a person develops Alzheimer's is dependent entirely on the level. No, not entirely. It's all about language. There's nothing in here that says that it's dependent entirely on the protein. You can infer that, but there's nothing in this argument that informs me of that. C, the Alzheimer's disease leads to a reduction in testosterone. Well, no, it'd be the reversed, that the reduction in testosterone would lead to Alzheimer's. And again, it's just careful reading. D, only people with Alzheimer's are at risk for injury. Oh, go away. Crawl away and stop. It's not only people with it, other people are too. And then E, a decline in testosterone levels puts one at increased risk for Alzheimer's. It's an easy answer.
Yes.
The problem with that one is you do have to read through, unless you want to read from E up, which I'm inclined to do. Like if I see a bunch of A's, like here you saw A and A for the 1 and 2, they're not going to keep making A the answer. But regardless, are you folks okay? Because this was a denser argument. It's clear to me, easy answer.
Yes.
You have any questions? Okay. Try one more and then we'll break in 6 here. And what do we have 6 here? We have an assumption issue. Okay. And it says here so I know, so it's a necessary assumption, right? Because saying something in the argument depends. The profitability of a business is reduced by anything that undermines employee morale. So you stop, just stop, pause. So this is drawing a connection between profitability and morale, right? They're interconnected, the profitability of business and morale. And they're saying here, you're telling me is your profits go down when your morale goes down. Okay. This is why. So stop, because this is an assumption issue. This is why is referring you back to the first sentence. Because the profitability of a business is reduced by anything that reduces morale. That's paying senior staff with stock option, which allows them to earn more when the enterprise prospers, it's not a wise policy, because it increases dramatically the difference in income between senior staff and employees who are only paid a fixed salary. Oh, okay. So what you're telling me in your conclusion is it's not a wise policy to allow senior staff to get stock options. So then you got to explain to me, so why? Why is that not why? Tell me why. I want to know why. Why is not wise? And the word because tells me why. Because it increases dramatically the income differential. Well, then it must be the case for that to be valid, that when you increase the difference in income between senior staff and employees, you lower the morale of the employees, because that's what you told me in the first sentence. So all you're doing on the assumption is just really connecting the word morale, which does not appear in the second sentence, to the second sentence, and more specifically to the reasoning in it. Okay. So for this to be valid, it would have to be the case that a dramatic difference in income would adversely affect the morale. And then you have A, large income differences between fixed salary employees and senior staff tend to undermine employee morale. That's the answer. And it could only be one answer. It's an assumption issue. So it's not even the best answer. It's the only answer. But again, it's knowing what to read for, which is if it's an assumption, there's a word or term that's hanging in limbo. And that word or term here is morale, which is mentioned in the first sentence, but not in the second. Just go back to the screen here. So do you guys see that one, number 6?
Yes.
Yes.
So my point in doing this, because then when we come back, I do want to hit the reading comp. The bulk of this work for you, right? If you want to be lawyers, the bulk of this work is going to be on your end. It's not what we do here. What we do here, what I'm trying to do here is make the time you invest on your own more effective and efficient. That's all I can do. You can't, I shouldn't say you can't. It's not prudent to think, well, I'll go to this one class for, if that's what this is, for 3 hours on Saturday, and I'll really pay attention and stuff. And well, maybe I won't, but I'll try. and then I'll go on with my life. That's not, it really is incumbent upon you to prepare, which is what I do. As Vicky pointed out to me yesterday with not the kindest observation, but she claimed I wasn't efficient, which is correct, but nevertheless, I had to resist. And I said, well, in all the years that I've been in court, never once have I been in court without every file I needed. Never once was I lacking a file I needed. To which her response to me was, that means you're prepared, not efficient. And she's right. So whether you're efficient or not, this business will reward those of us who prepare. And I mean, yeah. So understand that, this really is, you're not going to rub my head and go to law school. And if I can give you the techniques, if I can give you the swing, right? Like this is what you should be doing. So when you're working this week, go back into that logical reasoning. For heaven's sakes, don't put that down. And work towards understanding and to recognize and to challenge yourself to get outside the box. I think what Julie was saying earlier about maybe having a tendency to reflect and surmise, which is wonderful tendency, but is not going to help you on this test. So it's reflecting, okay, how do I adapt to the conditions of this test? And you need to make it a recognition test. And what I want you to recognize is IRAC. So we'll stop there. Any questions on what we did? And that I would like you to continue doing that in a similar way. All right. Well, then get up and stretch your legs and come back in 15 minutes and we'll hop into reading comp.
Thank you.
You bet. All right. Welcome back. Saturday afternoon with the Elsa. What more could anybody want? Kind of like pickles with your hamburger.
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to move into the reading comprehension. And I have two purposes. One is to bore you to tears. And actually it's not. I want to touch on passage selection. And you know, at some point, doesn't have to be now, but at some point you do have to come to a acceptance of what is achievable for you, and not by comparing yourself to somebody else. I'd hate to live my life comparing it to others. 'Cause mine would never work out. You got to be able to go into reading comprehension with the goal to score, to produce the highest possible score for you. And that is going to depend on, to I think a substantial degree, how much reading have you done and what's been the nature of that reading. You know, lawyers have to read. And I mean, I have to do it. It's like, you know, I didn't start out this way. You know, and you know, you are where I was many years ago. So the if you're going to answer for 4 passages, and not a high percent of you will do that. So just understand, the test is not designed to be completed. No section of this test is designed to be completed by a regular person. That would be me. Okay. And so don't delude yourself. And you can establish what you can achieve, you know, by sitting down and trying to answer all 4 passages. And if you keep getting your ass kicked and you keep doing 4 passages, well, that's the definition of stupidity. Doing the same thing over and over and getting the same outcome. But a lawyer would adjust and say, all right, I'm getting my ass kicked doing 4, let me try 3. So you got to come to what can you realistically achieve. And regardless of whether you are in that class of individuals who can complete 4 passages, and it's there, it's just not robust, but it's definitely there. No matter where you are, it all starts with readability. Again, none of this is fancy. I mean, I just so don't get it. I so don't get why people struggle with what the test wants from you. Which is what you should want from yourself, which is an honest self-inventory. What can you accomplish, and stop comparing yourself to other people. What can you accomplish? You have gifts others don't have. Others have gifts you don't have. Well, welcome to life. What you do with the gifts, not which ones you have. So if you're going to answer all 4, really what you're saying is you can read on the level that each of the 4 is written. You know, again, if writers write on a certain level, and as the level of difficulty increases, as the reading burden increases, as the vocabulary increases, the density of the vocabulary, as the content of whatever it is that's written about, as the complexity of that increases, well, puts greater burden on you. Right. And it is very likely on your test, at least one of the passages will be written on a level meant to be understood by a representative college student. That, you know, all four aren't going to be that way. I don't. One of them, I mean, it's very, very likely one or more of them is written just to say, well, we're not excluding everybody from law school. See, if we wanted to exclude everybody from law school, we give you everybody but freaks, right? We'd give you 4 reading comp passages that are written on a very high level by someone with very poor writing skills, which is much of law school. You know, judges are not typically known for their writing skills. They're not novelists. And they're dorks, and they write like dorks, and they have vocabulary of dorks, and they don't care about you guys, and that's the way it is. Get over it. Right. So on reading comp, no matter how many passages you're answering, you want to start with a passage that's either on your level or below your level. And it doesn't, to me, it doesn't matter what the subject matter is. It's more difficult to put a science passage in there, but it's not impossible. And so that's what I want you to think about as you prepare. When test day comes, I want you to look at each of the 4 passages. I don't care whether you're answering 1 or 4. Well, you're not going to answer 1. You could answer as few as 2. And that's dancing with the devil. But you could do it. But you know, more realistically, whether you're answering 3 or 4, everyone should set aside time where you're briefly examining each of the 4 passages, where in advance you've reached some conclusions about the comparative passage, because our internal feelings matter. Again, I can tell you till I'm blue in the face that science passage, just know the passage. Just know the passage. But if you're scared to death of science passages and you can't get over that, then you probably should not listen to me. You say, well, maybe that's the way to Peter, but it's not the way to me. And you have to take the test. So what you want to practice is identifying the passage or passages, right, where the writer is writing on your level. Like if we all went back and read whatever book I was given in the 2nd grade or the 1st grade, you know, Dick runs with Jane. Jane and Dick have Spot the dog. Spot the dog has a bone. Jane has a teddy bear named, you know, but you get, when the writer is on that level, you as a reader are reading from an elevated level. And so that's how reading comp is set up. It's some of it is, it's not gonna know, there's no spot on this test, but some of it is just descriptive. I mean, think about what's easier for you to understand. Like if somebody's describing something, somebody's relating something. To me, if you're just describing, well, it depends which is, I mean, if you're describing Einstein's theory of relativity, I'm screwed. But if you're describing, I don't know, what a dance technique was in 1840 in the South, well, I may not be interested, but it doesn't sound like something I can't understand if you're describing it, right? So a descriptive passage is different from an explanatory passage where you're actually explaining stuff. It's different from a passage where, again, what are you describing? Are you describing the philosophical theory of self-enlightenment? Or are you describing how to pick a jury? I don't know about you, but I'd rather be reading about how do you pick a jury, because it's just not going to be as much of a heavy lift. So that's where I wanted to start is, and again, you can do this in that study group. Choose some exams, like in reading comp, right? Take 3 or 5 exams. And the mission is for folks to identify which passage in the given exam is the passage you feel is most approachable. And people, you'll have different points of views and stuff, but then explore that and, be open to what other people's experiences are. But that's where it all begins, whether you're doing 2 passages, 3 passages, or 4 passages. It begins with selecting the passage that you can get the highest % right in the least amount of time. That's what you're trying to achieve. And so you should spend time honing that skill. Because like what % of test takers do passage number 1 because it's passage number 1, and do passage number 2 because it's passage number 2, and do passage number 3 because it's passage number 3. And I suspect it's a significant %. Well, they're not acting like lawyers. There's no lawyer on the planet who do that. So what I want you to do is we're going to stay in that same exam. Let's go to Law Hub. And let's go to, so that was prep test 67. Good. And now we're in section 4. So open up section 4 and then practice just this first step you're going to take, which is it's going to open up to question number 1. And you want to take just a glance at this. So for me, when it opens up, I'm in the passage with question view, and I don't want to be there. I want to go to passage only view. So again, you have to decide in advance, I'm going to invest, whatever it is, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, you're going to invest some period of time just examining the passage, right? So I'm looking here at the first one, and I look and I see, well, it's a study of an African-American entertainer. Okay, and I jump down to the second paragraph. And I've gathered much of background material, and I slip over to the third paragraph, and I'm reading their advantages and disadvantages. I'm just reading the first sentence. In undertaking a biographical study, and I'm going to click here on next page. And I'm looking at this final paragraph, and this is whoever Tucker is. There's nothing in here that scares me away. So I've seen enough. Like the first paragraph 1, it's about a minority. So on the LSAT, my subjective impression has been passages that are written where there's an intersection with the experience of having been a minority, in whatever capacity. As women can be considered a minority, but African Americans, Latino, Asian, auto workers, some group that's appeared that is deemed to be at risk. Generally, the passages are approachable. So I would look at passage number 1 and say that's going to be on my hit parade. So let me go here to. I would hop now question number 8. Because I just want to look at these quickly. 8. And again, I want to go to passage only view. And what do I see here? Because I want to compare this with 1, right? Taking the explication. When's the last time anybody's used the word explication? Yeah.
Never.
Well, yeah. So one of the indicia, one of the signposts, right, of increased difficulty is vocabulary. So right off the bat, taking the explication of experience as its object as well as its method, go away, right? So I'll keep reading, but this is certainly not going to be the first passage I read. Let me hop down to the second paragraph. Nisa, who apparently is who we're talking about, explains Nisa's personality in terms of I Kung ways, and for the general reader corrects and qualifies a number of received attitudes about simple societies. Okay. Then I hop over the third paragraph. Woven into Nisa's autobiography, so I know it's an autobiography, are allusions to whoever Shotak is, personal engagement with issues of gender. Okay, I'm clicking on next page. And then at this last paragraph, Nisa's story is interwoven with Shotak's presentation of their encounter. Okay, so I got enough to know that I can read it, but I don't want to read it before I have read the first passage. Then, and that's for Peter. Like, you guys could have, different reactions. I go to 15, and here's the comparative passage. So we will go over this, but again, I'd be looking at this and saying, okay, let me go to passage only view. Okay, and then in passage A, until recently, conservationists were often complacent about the effect of non-indigenous plant and animal species on the ecosystems they invade. Okay, I understand that. It's a little wordy, but I get it. Okay. Then I'm dropped down paragraph 2. Invasive plants profoundly affect ecosystems and threaten biodiversity throughout the world. And then you're going to give me an example. Okay, I got that. Let me go to passage B. I'll click on next page. And B is here. The real threat posed by the so-called, and well, this guy doesn't agree with whoever wrote passage A. The real threat posed by so-called invasive species isn't against nature, but against human ideas of what nature is supposed to be. Oh, okay. Then I read up here, the next paragraph. Invasions don't cause ecosystems to collapse. Got it? Final paragraph. When the issue is phrased as one of ecosystem destruction, the stakes are stark. We should choose between nature's life and nature's death. I got it. So I like this. I don't know about you guys, but not that I care a whole lot about it. Well, not that I'm a whole lot interested in ecosystems. I'm not. But I like that. They're going to argue. So I like arguing. So now, I've looked at these, and the first and the third passages are my favorites right now. I click on question number 20, and I click again. I want to go over here to passage view. And what do I have here? Can a sovereign have unlimited legal power? So this is going to be this is that surmise thing. Oh, let me surmise about this. I don't want to surmise. Even though I'm familiar with this kind of stuff. Second paragraph. Social sciences have recognized that sovereign's omnipotence can be a source of considerable practical difficulty for sovereigns themselves. Kind of wordy. Next paragraph. North and Weingast, there must be two authors, point out that it is often in a sovereign's best interest to make a credible commitment not to perform certain acts. Okay, and then they say, for example, so I'll understand that. Over here, the next paragraph, in the struggle to expand their empires, the English and the French monarchies required vast amount of capital. That's concrete. Okay. Next paragraph, beneath that is North and Weingast argue that the constitutional settlement imposed in England. All right, I've got to stop reading because I don't want to waste too much time. And thanks to, in the final paragraph, thanks to North and Weingast, others writers in the same vein. Okay, so I have enough information. I'm going to just come back to you guys for a moment. Let me lower this screen. And let me hit his. I can see you guys again. Okay. Do you get the gist of what I'm trying to do?
Yes.
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 You want to go to your strength. And so the fact that I'm going to say, like, I'm certain how I would handle this. And I would be, but I'm me, right? You'd rather answer 3 passages and be your age than answer 4 passages and be 68. It's little compensation for being 68 that I could answer all four. But I would look at that and say, passage 1 is the most readable. Passage 3 is the next most readable. I think the chances are passage 2 is going to come in third. And even though I'm familiar with the subject matter in passage 4, I would probably leave passage 4 to the end. And I have a plan. Did this at all assist you in developing an approach of how you would answer the reading comp passages on this test? Talk to me. Come on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And you understand that you have to balance the investment of time you make with whatever reward comes from that time. If no reward comes from that time, then you don't do this. All right. For me, I'm doing it. It gives me, again, the psychometric stuff. I feel like I have control. I feel like I feel more confident. That first passage, I got it. That third passage, I got it. I'll be fine with the second and or the fourth, because it's not going to take me all that long to do the first and the third. Now, that's my impressions. You with me? You may have very different impressions, but that's the skill you want to develop. Does anybody have any questions? Because what I'm going to do now is go back to the first passage and demonstrate how I would read it and what I'm looking for. And I again, you want a high level read. You're not reading the same, you're reading case law, which you have to do in law school. And you don't read case law the way you read statutory law. So you're reading for the big picture. Any questions on what we just did?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so let me go in here, pull up my, I'm going back to question number 1. And so this is the narrative, right? You're going to have 3 of these. I've gone to my passage only view. It tells me my reading burden, which is like 2.5 pages on when you're in the passage only view. Okay. And I'm just reading for the role in the argument of the paragraph. So I'll try to go through this. I'm going to read as quickly as I can, but if somebody wants this out there, just one thing that can be really helpful, what was helpful for me, is clock the amount of time it takes you to read the passage carefully. So we're just, whatever you're using, timepiece you're using, right? When you begin to read a passage, just click it on and then read the passage carefully. Don't rush your read and then click it off. And you're going to start to get a feel for how long it takes for you. Again, it's read, understand, interpret, and extrapolate. So you got to read it, you got to understand it, you got to be able to interpret it, and you've got to be able to apply it, which is the extrapolation part. So if anybody wants to time me, please do. And I'm not going to rush it. And this is how I read it. Okay, until my present study, African-American entertainer Lorenzo Tucker had not been extensively discussed in histories of United States theater and film. Got it. Yet during a span of 60 years, from 26 to 86, he acted in 20 films and performed hundreds of times on stage as a dancer, vaudeville straight man, singer, actor, and master of ceremonies. Got it. Behind the scenes, he worked as a producer, company manager, publicity person, lighting designer, photographer, and actors union administrator. Got it. In addition, Tucker was a first-hand witness to the history of African-American theater and film from the late 20s until his death in 86. Got it. During his later years, he amassed a large collection of African-American theater and film memorabilia, and these artifacts, along with personal memories, helped shed new light on a part of U.S. entertainment history about which, so far, there has been insufficient scholarship. So this is the background, the introduction into the guy. I got it. Next paragraph. I gathered much of the background material for my study of Tucker's life through research in special collections of the New York and Los Angeles public libraries, including microfilmed correspondence, photographs, programs, and newspapers. I got it. Also examined as primary source material for an analysis of Tucker's acting technique were the 10 still available films in which Tucker appeared. Got it. Additional information was acquired through interviews with some of Tucker's contemporaries and fellow performers. Got it. The primary source of information for the study, however, was a group of personal, in-depth interviews I conducted with Tucker himself in 85 and 86. Got it. That whole second paragraph is just the manner in which the research was conducted. Got it. Third paragraph. You know, there are both advantages and disadvantages in undertaking biological study of a living person. The greatest advantage is that the contemporary biographer has access to the person's oral testimony. Got it. Yet this testimony must be approached with caution, since each person recounting his or her own version for the historical record has a vested interest in the project. And no matter how fair-minded and objective one intends to be, the fact is that people often remember the events they want to remember in the version they prefer.
Cool.
It is the duty of the biographer, therefore, to verify as much of that narrative as possible. Got it. So this third paragraph is about oral testimony, and that when you take the oral testimony of a living person, you have to be very careful with it, because what they remember is maybe what they want to remember. Last paragraph. Information from Tucker has undergone careful scrutiny and has been placed up against the known facts for verification. And for the most part, information that could not be verified was not included in this study. But Tucker's recollection of his personal life could not always be independently verified, of course, since most of the daily events in the life of any individual can go unrecorded. So only those elements of Tucker's personal life that had a bearing on his career have been recorded here. At the same time, however, it is important to note that the majority of these recollections tend to corroborate while illuminating and providing a valuable perspective on other relevant historical evidence that is available. Got it. This study, therefore, will weave together the oral and other evidence to create the career biography of Tucker. So I don't know how long that took, but I do know, with the exception of a long run-on sentence in the third paragraph, this was a very straightforward read. So let me just see you guys again. So I'll tell you what my impression of that was, is the vocabulary was down to earth. Whether I'm interested in Tucker or not, I've never heard of Tucker, is not relevant. But I get it. I have the structure. The first paragraph, this is basically the guy's bio. Second is, this is how I conducted the research methods. The third had to do with the oral testimony. And the fourth was, be careful of where I used oral testimony, I had it corroborated, and this was my study. Okay. Did you guys have any impressions of this?
I thought it was pretty straightforward and less intimidating than most.
Well, yeah. I'm not going to accept the second clause, but I did think it was pretty straightforward. And I think as you read more of this, it'll become less intimidating. You know, it's like you just read more of it, and I guarantee you it would be less intimidating. It's you want to succeed, you should expect prolonged effort over a consistent effort over a prolonged period of time for incremental advantage. So I'm ready. And then I would answer now with the conviction that I understood the passage, not overread this stuff, not not imagine possibilities, no surmise. It's just let me get down to business and answer these questions. So let me go back here. So now I'm going to be on passage questions, a passage with the questions appearing. Okay. Which one of the following is the number one, right? What most accurately summarizes the passage? And A says, the career biography of Tucker constitutes an important addition to the history of U.S. theater and film, mainly because of the innovative methods used in researching the subject, which correct previous misinterpretations. So no. B, evidence from a variety of sources, including information from Tucker's own oral accounts, has been scrutinized and combined to create a career biography of Tucker that fills certain gaps in the historical record of U.S. theater and film. Yes, I'll keep reading, but yeah, he looks real wonderful. C, Tucker's interest in preserving a record of development of African-American film and theater and his initiative in making that record public have led to the filling of a gap in the published histories of performing arts. Not working for me. It's not terrible, but it's not B. D, the research method used in creating the biography of Tucker exemplifies some of the problems inherent in the quest for objectivity in recording the history or recent or contemporary events and persons. Well, it's not summarizing the entire passage, maybe summarizing a paragraph. And E, previous theater and film histories have been mistaken. I have no clue. I don't have to read any further because it's not about previous theater and film histories. So the answer is B. I'm not sure I would have read past B, but are you guys out there good with B? Well, let me know if you're not. Okay. Go to question number 2. Now here, the author's main purpose in mentioning Tucker's collection of memorabilia. All right, and now they're saying to me, okay, where is this? This is the last sentence of the first paragraph. So, here I stop, say, okay, let me just, what do you say about memorabilia? And this is when he said, yeah, during his later years, he amassed a large collection of African-American theater and film. Yeah, it was part of his research. Okay. And so his purpose in mentioning that is to A, indicate a source from which the author drew information about Tucker's life and times. Why wouldn't everybody on the planet pick A and move on? Wasn't that why it appeared in the first paragraph? Talk to me, tell me something.
Yes, because there was insufficient scholarship about the subject.
So again, what I'm trying to get to you is, as you prepare, of course, it's fine, and I encourage you to be reading all 5 answer choices as you prepare. But when you execute, you have to leave at least some of that behind. And the more you can leave behind, the better, because time is not your friend on this test. So the goal here is the way reading comp works, the issues are the individual questions. The rule is the passage. So what you're really doing is saying, no, I got the passage. And if I get 5 out of 7, or I get 6 out of 7, I'm golden, because I'm going to do 3 passages. And it really depends on, did I understand the law? Did I understand the rule, which is passage? 3.
Can you help explain why explain what they mean by A?
We on question number 2?
Yeah, I guess the questions, the wording's a little bit confusing to me.
The wording of the answer choice?
Yes.
Okay. Well, if you go back to like what you're being directed to, and they're kind enough to do that, at the end of the first paragraph says, well, during his later years, he amassed a large collection of African-American theater and film memorabilia. Now, when I read that, I'm being asked for what was the main purpose in him bringing that up? That's the question. And so I'm saying, well, the main purpose in him bringing that up is to cite a line of reasoning in support of his research. This is that line of reasoning, his line of I'm going to go look at these things and from them use that evidence to extrapolate out. So the reason the memorabilia is mentioned there is it's one of the sources of evidence that he's relying on. So all that work's done. Now I look at A. And A says, so the purpose of mentioning the memorabilia is to indicate a source from which the author drew information about Tucker's life and time. That's right. The memorabilia is a source from which the author is drawing information about Tucker's life and times.
Mhm.
That's it. I'm done. I'm so done. So does that answer your question?
It does. It does.
Well, you sound hesitant.
Yeah, only because I guess when I look at, for example, C.
But he's not putting it there to justify reliance on Tucker's personal memories. That may come, you can weave that in later on, I suppose. But it's much more there to say, here are my sources. The reason this is in here is not, he's not doing it solely to justify. I don't even know that Tucker's personal memories have an overlap with the memorabilia. Yeah, they may or they may not. I don't know. But it is absolutely within the context of that first paragraph. That first paragraph, the whole purpose of that first paragraph is here's where I'm getting my information from.
Mhm.
So I get it. I get you could read C and C would apply to everything here. So if you're going to take C as the answer, well, then everything in that first paragraph is there to justify the reliance on his personal memories. And we haven't been told what his personal memories are. And it's not to justify a reliance on them. It's to offer independent corroboration insofar that they intersect, which I don't know that they do. So I think you need to be careful, Julie.
I definitely do. I'm picking that up right now.
Yeah, I this is not. Again, I get to see. I get how you could get to see. It's way more speculative than A. A is not speculative at all. A is accurate. You could argue that both A and C are accurate, but A is accurate. C may or may not be accurate, and I don't know. You haven't told me what Tucker's personal memories are. All right, that's number 3. And have here, okay. Oh, good, I like this. This is suppose. Suppose that a well-known nuclear physicist has written and published a book consisting of that physicist's own recollections of the events surrounding some important scientific discoveries. Okay. It can be inferred that the author of the passage would be most likely to view the physicist's books as, and then again, before you ever look at this, based on this passage, you would be concerned that the physicist would recall what he or she chose to recall, not what actually happened. And so I'm looking for something to mimic that. So A says the author here would most likely view the physicist's book as A, being at considerable risk of representing some historical facts. Is the answer.
Yeah.
And again, it's fine to look at B, C, D, and E. You should now, but I'm saying as exam day comes along, you should be looking at A and saying anything else has to kick A's ass, because A is the answer until I see something that is much, I can't imagine anything being clearer. So again, the investment of time, just like in logical reasoning, the investment of time is understanding the argument and then pausing, so that the pause is, all right, let me understand it and be ready to apply it. And reading competence, the same thing. Is everybody okay with 3?
Mhm.
Okay, let's take a look at 4. So what I have here in 4. The passage most strongly supports the inference that the author would agree with which one of the following statements about the text that his passage introduces. Okay, so the wording is a little awkward there, but okay, this would be about the text of whatever he wrote. Okay, so would the author agree with respect to the text that A, its subject matter and methodology make it appropriate for publication by a publisher of popular books, but not for the publication by an academic? So again, respectfully, A is just stupid. So if you picked A, don't ever do it again, because it's just dopey. B, would this author say, yeah, my text, it should be valuable to scholars, not only because of the research-based information it contains, but also because of the innovative research methods developed and implemented by the author. Well, I like the first clause that I imagine scholars would be interested in, but I don't like the second clause, because what's with the innovative research methods? If you left the word innovative out, it'd be more attractive to me. I'm going to keep reading. Like, if there's nothing better, I would pick B. But the word innovative, modifying research, there's nothing innovative that I've read about is research methods.
Mhm.
C, is that the text, it should be interesting, not only because of its account of Tucker's career, but also because of the significant information it provides regarding the US entertainment history. That sounds fine. I'll keep reading, but that certainly sounds fine. The text in D, it should not be taken mainly as an attempt to report an objectively accurate historical record of events. D's dopier than A. It should be taken as an attempt, right, to be objectively accurate. Doesn't mean it was objectively accurate, but of course it was an attempt. So D's wrong. And E, it should be accepted as a useful and reliable methodological guide for the use in verifying the authenticity of the US entertainment memorabilia, please. So C is, I would need to read all 5 here, but C is hands down the answer to me. I mean, B, I see B, but no, C. Talk to me.
Yeah, I can just definitely see myself getting stuck between B and C. It's Julie again. Yeah, that's my issue. I could definitely see a universe where like that innovative, because it's the same thing I saw. The innovative would have been like, if I ignore that, this could be the answer. But then I'm stuck between like an almost answer and an answer that I just have to be more confident in, which is C.
Yeah. And again, it's all about words, Julie.
Mm-hmm.
The neighbors. So the neighbor innovative.
Because like you said, there's nothing, it's special about the research methods. I don't see anything. And it's also innovative means that it hasn't been done as much before, which wouldn't that mean like it would lack reliability? Like there's a lot of things that like, yeah.
Yeah, but that's what they want you to read for.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that was 4, 5. Now here they say, so what is he's primarily concerned with something here. All right. So you got to read them, so is the author primarily concerned with criticizing and correcting certain, I'm just stupid. I stopped reading. This is not about criticism. Is it B, about proposing an alternative method of historical investigation?
Mm-mm.
No. C, is it concerned with summarizing the main points and assessing the value of the historical study that will follow this introduction to a text? No, I mean, I don't even understand what C means. D, is it primarily concerned with re-examining a previously held historical point of view, identifying its weaknesses? No, I mean, I'm done. No.
It's E.
E, is it primarily concerned with explaining the author's choice of subject matter and methods used in researching a particular subject? Yeah.
Yeah.
So some of these just are not hard. And they're rewarding you for reading the passage and understanding it. And you have to have a plan. So when you do this, you're saying, all right, how long is it taking me to read the passage? And then how long is it taking me to carefully answer the questions? 6. Which one of the following does the author mention as a source that was used in gathering information for the text that the passage introduces? So this is the explicit one. This is in the text. Okay, so what did he mention? Did he mention A, critics' reviews of productions? No, he did not. B, did he mention, well, he mentioned memorabilia, but did he mention memorabilia concerning Tucker collected by some of his fellow performers?
No.
No. But you see, if you just saw memorabilia, oh, let me pick that. Well, that's great, but it's the wrong answer. C, did he mention scripts of some plays and films that Tucker produced? Not to my knowledge. D, did he mention interviews with people who performed with Tucker? Yes, he did.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm not reading E because that's the answer. You know, if you need to go back and see that, you can go back and see that, but that's there. Then with that, I believe it was in the second paragraph. So D's the answer.
Mhm.
And I go to 7. And here it's information in the passage most strongly supports which one of the following inferences regarding the text, again, that the passage produced. So this is an inference that would flow from whatever text he produced. So I'm reading that text, right? A, it assesses well-known African-American in films in way that have little in common with the assessment of previous critics and historians. I don't know that. I don't know whether it's little in common or not. B, it was written by a person who participated with Tucker and at least some of the theatrical ventures that Tucker undertook. Well, no, this guy didn't participate with Tucker. C, it was written by a person who does not expect to be recognized as a mainstream participant in scholarship concerning US film and theater history. Why would you ever pick that? Of course, this person thought he would be seen that way. And D, its analysis of Tucker's acting technique is not based on a close examination of a preponderance of the film in which Tucker performed. You know, they're going to your understanding of the word preponderance, because that's the answer, is he did not have a preponderance. He had, there were 20 films and he assessed, he personally assessed, I think, fewer than 10. So that's not a preponderance. Preponderance means more than 50%. So 10 or less would not be a preponderance. And it's testing you on the word preponderance, which is a legal term. So if I would, D's the answer, but E says its rhetorical structure is not closely analogous to the structures of a majority of previous scholarly biographies, and I have no reason to. So D is the answer, and D, it's probably a necessary condition that you understand the definition of preponderance, which is a majority. So talk to me.
with this question and the previous one that is similar, I don't really understand what it's asking.
You mean about the text?
Yeah, like I don't really understand, like what am I supposed to be looking for, or like I'm not understanding the question too much. I don't know if I'm
Understand.
getting into it.
Yeah. I have the same issue as her.
The way I'm reading it, it's like, so I've got what he wrote. I've got the biography. It's in my hand. I'm reading the text because the passage itself is about the research techniques that he's using. It's not about the text itself. He's not in that. In the passage, you're not looking at the final book. You're looking at what led up to the book. So when they're saying the text, now you imagine you're reading the book, right? So now I've got the book in front of me. And if I go back here and I'm looking here at question number 7, and I've got the book in front of me, right? And it says information in the passage most strongly supports which one of the following inferences regarding the text, which is the book that's published. And it's going to be, well, what the information in the passage tells me is that whatever you're reading is not going to claim that its analysis is not going to claim that Tucker's acting technique was formed from a preponderance of the films that were viewed in the research, because in the research, I'm informed that at most 10 films were actually viewed. Well, 10 is not a preponderance of 20. And in the question before that, was it 6? Yeah, where I mentioned the text again. Which one of the following does the author mention as a source that was used in gathering information which means the text is whatever was published, right? And then you're going back and say, well, what you told me was he was going to interview part of his technique was to interview with people who perform with Tucker. So I agree that the wording in those questions it's different because there's no text that's published, or you have no reason to believe that the text was published when the passage itself was written, because the passage is simply describing how the text came about. And questions 6 and 7 are saying, okay, so here's the text. What do we know about the text based on what we were told about how it was researched? That's the best I can do, Mariella. Okay, then quickly, let's take a look at the comparative.
Like, can I actually like not regurgitate, I should use that word, but can I please like say back what you're saying about like these types of questions, just to make sure I got it?
Okay, sure.
So in these, like for example, question 7, we're given a passage from the book, and it's asking us to make an inference about, I guess, the book based on this passage. So for example, because this book did not assess a majority, I guess, of Tucker's acting, like in his films, it will not like assess the technique in the majority of his films, because a majority of his films were not assessed.
Right.
That's
What you're looking at 7 is you have the text in your hand. Whatever the text was, you got it in your hand. And this is saying, okay, so what can we infer about what's going to be in that text? And D is saying, well, the analysis of Tucker's acting technique is not based on a close examination of a preponderance of the films in which Tucker performed. And we know that because we were told that. So yeah, it is different. I will say that both 6 and 7, by referring you to the actual text as opposed to the research which led to the actual test, is different. But yeah, I think the way you're describing it is correct, Julie.
So like it wouldn't be C because for example, it's saying the author does not expect to be recognized as a like a mainstream participative scholarship, but that's not true because this author is trying to be recognized because there's so little scholarship on like African American performers.
Right. That's correct.
Okay, this
Yep.
okay. It's odd, but it's there.
Well. All right, and then just briefly, let's push ahead to 15 through 19, and I'll leave I'll quickly go through this. But what you're looking again in the passage, in the comparative passage, again, I'm going to passage only view. And for me, the most important thing is to get the intersection of these two, like what's uniting these two? Why are these two things appearing essentially in the same magazine, the same publication? Okay. So again, can I understand it? So let me read passage A. Until recently, conservationists were often complacent about the effect of non-indigenous plant and animal species on the ecosystems they invade. So you're telling me that's the way it was. Okay. Many shared Charles Elton's view, introduced in 58, on invasive species, that disturbed habitats are most vulnerable to new arrivals because they contain fewer or less vigorous native species. So they're being invaded because they're weak. Now, however, ecologists realize that when humans introduce new species into existing ecosystems, even pristine, species-rich habitats are threatened. Okay, so that's a change, right? So now we have the ecologists challenging the original view. Final sentence. The rapidly increasing conservation problems and high damage and control costs generated by these invasions merit serious attention. So I got it. I got the first paragraph and I'm ready. Invasive plants profoundly affect ecosystems and threaten biodiversity throughout the world. Okay. For example, to the untrained eye, the Everglades in Florida appear wild and natural. Yet this and other unique ecosystems are being degraded as surely as if by chemical pollution. I got it. In Florida, forests are growing where none existed before. Okay. Traditionally, sawgrass dominated large regions of Florida marshes, providing habitat for unique Everglades wildlife. Okay. Although sawgrass grows over 9 feet tall, introduce Australian, whatever they are, Australian melaleuca, whatever they are, trees, right? Well, they grow 70 feet tall and now outcompete marsh plants for sunlight. As those M trees grow tall and form dense stands, their leaf litter increases soil elevations, inhibiting normal water flow. Okay, if you say so. Wildlife associated with sawgrass marshes decline. Okay. Similarly, in Australia, the introduction of the Scotch broom plants led to the disappearance of a diverse set of native reptiles. So I get it. So the whole thing about A is that first paragraph is that the ecologists have now rejected the original view. And the original view was, don't sweat the invasive species. And then the second paragraph is the evidence in support of that. And it really relies on these examples you gave me. And there aren't a lot of examples, but so that's how this proceeds, right? It's all by examples where invasive plants have screwed up an environment. Got it. Okay. So I'm clicking next page now because I'm going to read passage B and say, okay. Now I remember when we were reviewing this, B seemed to be taking issue with A. So let's see. B. The real threat posed by so-called invasive species isn't against nature, but against human ideas of what nature is supposed to be. Okay, got it. Species invasion is not a zero-sum game, with new species replacing old species at a 1-to-1 ratio. Okay. Rather, and with critical exceptions, it's a positive sum game in which ecosystems can accept more and more species.
You are so beautiful.
Indeed, in both the marine and terrestrial ecosystems, ecologists have found that invasions often increase biodiversity at the local level. If you add many new species and lose few or no native species, the overall species count goes up. We got it. Invasions don't cause ecosystems to collapse. Invasions may radically alter the components of an ecosystem, perhaps to a point at which the ecosystem becomes less valuable or engaging to human, okay? But 50 years of study has failed to identify a clear ecological difference between an ecosystem rich in native species and one chock full of introduced species. Unlike ecosystem destruction, and then there are examples here, clear cutting of forests, for example, invasions don't make ecosystems shrink or disappear. They simply transform them into different ecosystems. I got it. Final paragraph. When the issue is phrased as one of ecosystem destructions, the stakes are stark. You know, we choose between nature's life and nature's death. In actuality, introduced species present a continuum. A few species do cause costly damage and tragic extinctions, but most plant and animal species simply blend in harmlessly. The issue they present for humans is not whether we will be surrounded by nature, but rather what kind of nature we will have around us. I just think that's a very readable, straightforward comparative passage. I would love to have had that in my test. But did that passage seem approachable?
Yeah.
Yes.
And so between the first passage and the second passage, there'd be 12 questions. You know, can you think of, you know, in a panic, like the world is collapsing. If you read those two carefully and you gave them the time they required, I don't know, say it takes you 25 minutes just to read those two. And you had 10 minutes left to look at either the second one or the fourth one. Like if you were me, like you may have found the second or the fourth one more attractive. But my point is you want to pick two that you're confident with. Give them the time they need, but not more time than they need. And out of that 12, if you can come away with 9 or 10, then you're going to be in a wonderful place. You know, because then you still have half the test remaining, at least some of the time remaining. And the key is to do well on the first two passages you pick, and that is contingent upon you picking the two passages you can perform on. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Like in theory, yeah.
You want to practice that. Practice, open the reading comp section and say, this is the one I would do. And then this is the second one I would do. Give yourselves, and again, it depends on what your ability is, right? So if you're doing all four, well, then you're doing all four. But begin with 3 and say, can I do 3? And if I do 3, where I want to be is, you know, you do the math. If you do 80%, 80%, and 70%, what does that come? And then you're guessing on the final one. So, you know, if you were just talking about the number 5, we're not talking about 20 questions, right? But if a reading comp section had 20 questions and you did 80, 80, 70, and then 20, because you're guessing on one, well, 80 would be 4. So you'd have 4 and 4 is 8. Then you'd have, say, 3, and now you're up to an 11, and then you'd be guessing 1, and you'd be 12 out of 20. And that would probably be just around the median score. Meaning the median score is going to be about the 60th percentile. So, again, you want to worry less about what you're scoring and focus more on what are the choices you're actually making. Because those two things will be inextricably interwoven. So I would say, and then we're going to switch next week. Next week, we'll move into phase 2, and phase 2 will involve doing some controlled testing. So we'll be doing that together. I'll introduce it next week. But you should see this as, this is sort of the end of phase 1, where it's all preparation. And now we're going to go into phase 2, where you're still doing preparation, but now you're doing preparation and measuring. So you should now be able to begin this process of saying, okay, I've done all this work on relative order and analytical. What happens when I have, say, 2 relative order hypotheticals to work on, and I've got 20 minutes? Or if I go to logical reasoning, well, then hopefully you've had an opportunity to brief flaws and assumptions and conclusions and, specific issues. Okay, well, now we move to the second phase of, okay, but if you had a test and the only thing on it were flaw issues, and you had, say, 10 questions, how would you perform in 20 minutes? So that's where we're going to go, and that'll be for a few weeks, just saying, okay, now let's combine the two. Let's take the preparation, let's build on that, and now go into specific areas where we can begin to measure whether you're getting a handle on it or not. All right. Any questions?
Can I speak with you after class, please? It's Julie.
Yeah, sure. Any questions other than Julie after class?
I was gonna say, can you send today's recording?
Sharita, I send all recordings. Have you not been getting recordings?
No, I have.
Well,
I didn't,
you asked
I
me.
just want to make sure, sorry.
Teasing. The plan is I will do that. I can't really tell you that the plan will be realized because, well, the assumption is I'll be around to send them and you'll be around to receive them.
Thank
That's
you.
assumption that only time will bear out. All right. Well, then get out there. Have the. I
You
mean,
too.
hello. Get your butts outside because it's a beautiful day.
I just came back inside.
Well, all right. Now you get your butt outside.
Peter, are we still doing the meetings with you?
I mean, the telephone calls.
Yes, can I schedule one with you after class?
Why don't you email me your availability and we'll get that done?
All right, no problem. That sounds good.
Because I don't have my calendar here, but email me and we'll get it done. Absolutely.
Okay,
All right. All right.
Thank you.
Off with you.
okay.
Thanks.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you, Peter. Have a good day, everybody.
Bye. Have a good day.
So what's up, Julie?
Okay, I guess I just asked my question. It's about my credentials. So I still don't have access to Focus Approach as like student.
No, you do have access.
I
I
don't-
assure you, you have access.
I'm putting in, I've tried both emails and both passwords, and it tells me the information you've entered is incorrect. Do you happen to know what
Hang
email?
on. Let me